from in the Indian Women Scientists Association headquarters at Vashi. I welcome you all for the 24th talk or webinar, as we call it, by the Learning Garden Initiative of the Science Awareness Committee of Indian Women Scientists Association, or IWSA, or IWSA in short. This online series of webinars started in July during lockdown, and we have already reached the 24th webinar, so it sounds awesome. Recently, in October, from October 10th, there to be precise, we have been showcasing nature in the form of short video clips made by our members themselves. They have used their immediate surroundings for these videos. Today's video comes all the way from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. This clip has been sent by Jaya. She is the daughter of one of our trustees, Dr. Bhaktava Mahajan. Jaya lives on the 40th floor, but has managed to create a green space up there in her 100 square feet balcony adjoining her living room. She and her family can relax and have tea in the midst of this neat garden on a cane sofa and a tea table. Everything has been aesthetically arranged while following sustainability principles. So let me show you the video.
My name is Jaya. I'm the daughter of Bhaktava Mahajan. She's a member of IWSA. My mother has constantly
Not seen.
Jackfruits, mangoes.
Replay.
I was able to see.
Yeah, I chose the video.
I was able to see.
Please, everybody respond if you can see the video.
Gorgeous flowers which grow in her society garden in Vashi.
Yes, we can see.
I have my own small balcony garden that I just wanted to share with all of you. So come along for a tour.
Yes.
So this is my
Beautifully seen.
garden. My balcony is about 150 square feet, not very big, and we are on the 40th floor, so we are very high up in the sky, and we get lots of wind and lots of rain and not much sun. My balcony is bright, so my plants are exposed to bright sun, but not full sun, and that's the result why I don't get too many fruits. But that has never stopped me from trying to plant vegetables and fruits. So let me show you some of the plants that I'm really proud of. This is Bhindi. I wonder if you can see, I just had a few which are growing currently. This was a Bhindi which I planted, which my son, 6 years old, actually planted. And there is some cauliflower. The saplings are doing really well. I got these special seeds from a company which specializes in home gardens, not farms. This is mint. Not doing too well, but I think it revived. It will revive. The key to plants is to not give up on them. So even if they are looking a bit miserable, or if they look they're diseased, I think a little bit of cutting and pruning goes a long way. There is aloe vera. I think my mother, who had come for a visit, had planted this aloe vera for me. I have tried, removing the edges, peeling off of leaf, trying to use it as a gel. Honestly, it was ducks. What else do I have in my garden? I have lemongrass. I have beautiful flowers which bloom. I don't know how they bloom. They don't get much sun, but bloom. I think they're okay. They have adapted to this conditions. I have some dhania. Again, this was very tricky to grow. I keep pruning the tops. The leaves come from the bottom. I have gorgeous orchids. Orchids is again never give up on them. So they are blooming currently. But once the flowers fall off, that doesn't mean that your plant has died. I have all these old orchids over here. This is about 6 months old. This is again about a year old. I just leave them be, and within 6 to 8 months, they one day bloom again. So never give up on an orchid plant. You never know when it starts blooming again. These are my curry pattas. This one looks gorgeous. This one is fantastic. There's nothing like fresh curry patta when you're doing your chalk. This one is a little scraggly. I have no idea what's gone wrong with it. I can only put it down in old age because I can see some new babies coming from the bottom. I think if it doesn't revive in a few days, I'll just chop it off at this part and it will grow again. That's the amazing thing about plants. All they need is, I think, love and care and water regularly. Each plant in the garden requires water, different quantities. Some require it every day, some require it once in 2 days. My husband is my in-house gardener. He does all the potting and the digging and the gardening. My younger son loves joining along in the garden. I just give instructions. This is my shelf for these plants which don't require much water or sun. They just kind of grow and thrive by themselves. I never buy new shelving units. I like to repurpose things in my garden. So this shelf actually used to belong to a bathroom. And these orange things are actually old table mats. I try not to throw things. I just repurpose them for different things. This was an old table, which is like really old. It used to be a dining table, but I've just folded it and refused to throw it in the tub. I have now made it like a table for my garden. And sometimes we do barbecues over here in the balcony. So this is my small balcony. I love growing my own plants, my own vegetables. I don't care that I'm so high up. The ground is way below, but who cares? I have my own paradise right over here.
Hi everybody, I am going to show you my cucumber. I'm gonna eat this for salad. I hope it's yummy. This is my first time I planted a kakuri. My mom will show you the kakuri.
Hi everyone, this is my favorite place in my front yard and also my granddaughter's favorite place.
So that was fascinating to experience the pride in the little one's voice as he showed us that kakadi or cucumber. Now let's return from the dizzying heights of the 40th floor to the sea level and learn about hydroponics at home. I now invite Dr. Maitreyi Paul, IFSA member, who is a retired professor and head of Department of Microbiology, VES College, Mumbai, to introduce IFSA to those in the audience who are new to IFSA. I also request her to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Sheila Donde. Over to you, Maitreyi ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all for today's talk on hydroponics by Dr. Sheila Donde. At the onset of presentation, it will be nice to know a little bit about IFSA, that is Indian Women Scientists Association. This is an NGO which was established in 1973 by a dedicated group of women scientists to encourage women folk to learn science and take science to the commoners. Over the years, IFSA, the small seedling, has grown into a big tree with even more branches all over India. having the headquarters at Vashi, Navi Mumbai, sorry. At headquarters, it has developed two distinct wings. One caters to societal needs of women, involving women's hostel, daycare center, where children from 6 months to 12 years of age are taken care of. Also a kindergarten, preschool, ECE, that is Early Childhood Care and Education course, affiliated to SNDT University, is conducted. There is a library facility, a reading room, computer center are some of the sections of this wing. The other wing is AFIFSA, deals with teaching science via Science Awareness Program, which conducts classes for children of middle school from economically underprivileged background, conducts refresher course for PG students and teachers in collaboration with science academics. Also, it conducts BRNS lectures for college students by eminent speakers. The recent development in science awareness is the Learning Garden, that is LG, which gives in-depth knowledge regarding biodiversity, region-specific, endemic plant species, then specific flowers and plants catering to butterflies, plants required for puja rituals, their significance, plants producing aroma, color, medicines, and arboretum. In fact, it is being developed as a living museum of plant bodies, which is an unique feature of Navi Mumbai, where students can have first-hand knowledge about the plant kingdom. However, due to ongoing pandemic situation, we had to curtail these visits. This situation propelled us to develop member enrichment program, that is MEP, where different members of IFSA speak subjects related to plants and others. The other lecture series is Science and Our Life, that is SOUL, catering to health related issues. All these are meant for broadening the horizon of our own knowledge. In MEP series, the 24th lecture will be given today by an eminent member, Dr. Sheila Donde. Dr. Sheila Donde graduated in microbiology, obtained her master's in biophysics and doctorate in molecular biology from TIFR, Mumbai. Madam has done her postdoctor in leprosy from FMR, Mumbai, and East Genetics from CMU, USA. For 28 years, she was the head Department of Life Science and Biochemistry at St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, where she taught undergrads and postgraduate students. She has guided PhD students and conducted several UGC, BRNS research projects. Dr. Donde was awarded the Teacher of the Year in 2013 by INSA, that is Indian National Science Academy. Madam was the Vice Principal of St. Xavier's College for 4 years. She was the visiting faculty of ISSER, that is Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, Pune, 3 years. As a feather in the cap is Dr. Donde is volunteer for E-Vidyaluka, teaching mathematics and language to rural children in remote villages of Maharashtra. Now, I request Dr. Sheila Donde to proceed with her presentation. Thank you. Over to
Good
Dr.
afternoon,
Donde.
everybody. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I hope all of you can hear me.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yes.
Okay. So I must first of all thank the organizers for inviting me here and giving me this opportunity to share whatever little information I have or whatever experience I have gained from doing hydroponics at home just for the last 2 or 3 years. So it is really nice that I can share this information The whole idea is to exchange ideas, in fact, and so that in case there is anybody who feels inhibited to start hydroponics, or if somebody is interested in starting hydroponics just as a hobby at home, I thought this will encourage you. Of course, I will be dealing with the basics. There could be people in the audience who know much more about hydroponics or have grown many more plants than I have in hydroponics. I would be very happy if they would share their experiences with us at the end of the talk. So my talk is really going to be very basic, and I'm going to start with the basics. So maybe we can start now.
Yes, ma'am. If I can interrupt for a few seconds, Donde ma'am.
Yes.
I request all the rest of the audience to please close your cameras and keep your mics on mute. If you have any questions, you can post them in the chat box, so they will be addressed later by the speaker. Thank you very much. Ma'am, you can continue.
Yes, I will just get my presentation. Let's see.
Yes.
Okay. Can everybody see?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let's start now. And if there are any questions, as I said, I hope I'll be able to answer them at the end of the session. So first of all, let us see what is hydroponics. I'm sure this term is not at all new to people. But just to give you put it in proper perspective, I thought it would be nice to at least define what is hydroponics. It is just growing plants in using only water, nutrients, and a growing medium in which the plants get some support to grow. Now, this word was coined in 1929 by Dr. William Gericke of University of California. He initially wanted to call it aquaculture, but then he realized that aquaculture was a term that was used for cultivating fish. So he decided he will call it hydroponics, and that's how the word came about. This is also called soilless gardening because this method does not use any soil. So in fact, it is gardening without any soil at all. So if you look at the history, just to put it in perspective, this is not at all a new science. It started in 600 BC. In fact, the first evidence that we have is of 600 BC, which is the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. And so it is an ancient science, more than 2,500 years old. Of course, at that time, it was just one little thing, that one place on this earth which had these type of gardens. So people did not realize the value of hydroponics in those days. In 1000 AD, the floating gardens by the Aztecs, I have a picture later to show you, they are the ones who in fact propagated it and used it for cultivation. Much later, as you can see, as we go along, I think it was only after the 1940s that this became useful for commercial purposes as well as for as hobby for people to grow vegetables at home. So just to give you a picture of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, built in 600 BC, the entire greenery that you see here is only growing on nutrient water. There is absolutely no soil. Imagine, so people had thought about hydroponics 2,500 years ago. And this is, you can even get to see this today in the southern valley of Mexico. It was in the 1000 AD, the Aztecs of Central America were thrown out of the kingdom by their ruler. And just to survive, they decided they will make plantations on rafts. Rafts were made of roots, and they just put some sediment coming from the riverbed on it and grew some seeds. And then they realized they could actually grow a lot of vegetables. They could even grow huge trees on these plantations. So this is these were called chinampas, and you can get to see them even today in Mexico. Well, we now fast track and come to 1970s. Now we see hydroponics in a completely automated, computerized, and streamlined fashion. Several places all over, not only our country, all over the world, where people have commercialized it. Of course, there are people also using it at home for personal purposes. And then people have diversified from hydroponics to aeroponics to aquaponics. Aeroponics meaning growing plants in a mist of nutrient medium. And aquaponics is growing plants using water that is used by fish or in which fish is growing. We will talk about both these a little later. And I think that the reason why this has been now commercialized is because there is a tremendous demand for fresh, nutritious, and pesticide-free farm produce coming directly to your homes. And hence, hydroponics has actually grown by leaps and bounds, and I will show you what it looks like today. So this is the modern hydroponics in a commercial fashion. On the left, you can see two different methods of hydroponics for growing vegetables, fruits. And on the right, as I said, is aeroponics. And at the bottom right is aquaponics, where you can see fish growing in a tank, and water used by the fish is circulated into the plants above, so that the plants are growing purely on used fish water. Okay, now all of us have done hydroponics at some point, definitely. All of us have grown money plants in water, and that is hydroponics. So this is sort of the first experience one has of hydroponics, growing plants in water. Now let us see why we should use hydroponics. Well, it has several advantages over traditional farming. So let us see what those advantages are. First of all, it saves land. So if you want to do traditional farming, you have to first find the land for it. You have to clear the land, which means you're either losing wildlife or a forest habitat. So you need, and you also erode the topsoil, so which is one of the major problems for vegetative farming. Well, then you also can major advantage is that you can use hydroponics both in an urban as well as a rural setting. You can use it indoors, you can use it outdoors. People have used hydroponics even in outer space as well as in underwater locations. So it can be actually growing vegetables, growing fruits anywhere, literally anywhere. Make it convenient, use it at your own height, wherever. You don't have to bend down, you don't have to sit on the field to do any gardening. So all this has increased the food security of the world. Okay. Another thing that is important is for hydroponics, we have complete control of all the growing conditions. We are not left to the vagaries of nature. We can control temperature, light, aeration, water flow, nutrients, pH, which is measure of acidity, and electrical conductivity. So these are things that can be very easily controlled. And hence, we can actually determine the appearance of our product, the nutritious value of our product, as well as the yield of our product. Well, it's also very labor efficient. Since there is no soil, there are no weeds. Anyone who has experience of growing plants in soil knows that weeding is a very, very big problem. So here you do not need to do any weeding at all. It's very eco-friendly and economical because you do not use any herbicides. There are no chemical pesticides, and you're recycling the nutrients. So you're also saving water, and there is no runoff into the environment. The water requirement for hydroponics is only 10% of that what you require for land irrigation. There is also, it gives you a higher yield, and that is a reason for giving a higher yield, because plants that grow in water have a much smaller rooting system. They do not produce very large roots. The reason being they do not need to. Since they have, the roots are already submerged in a nutrient solution, the roots do not have to go running around into the soil finding nutrition. Since nutrition is available for them all the time, they do not need to grow very, very long. And hence, because they have a smaller rooting system as compared to the land varieties, you can pack many more plants in the same amount of space, and which reaches up to a density of 16 times what you could plant on land. Also, the yield is much higher, nearly about 200% of yield that you would get in land plants. The quality, as I just mentioned, is very uniform. It has extended shelf life, superior taste, appearance, etc. So it looks like there are just a whole lot of advantages in doing home hydroponics versus land irrigation. But there are, of course, limitations. It is time consuming because you need to monitor all the parameters regularly. The parameters that I mentioned in terms of pH, electrical conductivity, temperature, and so on. It does require some amount of expertise because you need to monitor, and after monitoring, you need to regulate these parameters so that you have optimal conditions for the plants that you want to grow. There is a lot of infrastructure and technology that is used, that needs to be used for all this. That means you need electricity. So if there's electric failure, you have lost all your plants. So which means you need a power backup. Initial costs are high. So if you do not want to spend a lot of money to start with, you do not go into infrastructure technology at all. You use the simplest method, which I will be talking about, which has very, very low cost to start with. And last of all, it is not classified as organic. By definition, we will talk about this a little later. Well, okay. So now let us begin looking at what are the basic requirements, first of all, for plant growth, and then if you want to grow these plants in water. As you can see, and this is, I think, a picture that all of you must have seen right from school, that these are the requirements that you need for a plant to grow. You need sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water for photosynthesis. The general requirement is about 2 to 3.5 liters of water per day, per meter square. Oxygen is of course released by these plants on photosynthesis, but oxygen is very much required for these plants to grow, because in order to maintain the dissolved oxygen levels in the water in which they are growing. Roots absorb a lot of oxygen that is dissolved in the water. And if you do not have dissolved oxygen in the water in which you're growing the roots, you're not going to get healthy plants. So dissolved oxygen levels are extremely critical. Nutrients, of course, you have to supply. There are at least 17 essential elements that you need to supply. When dissolved in water, these elements, of course, are present in an ionic form, and that is the form in which the plants absorb the nutrients. So they have to be ionized. And you need to supply all these essential salts if you want the plants to grow healthy. pH is a measure of acidity or alkalinity of the water, and that has to be strictly maintained, and I will tell you why in the next slide. Roughly, you keep it between 5.5 and 6.5, and there is a reason for it. Electrical conductivity is a measure of the concentration of ions that are present in the nutrient solution. So when you've just started with seedlings, they do not require you put your seeds into the growing medium and just put plain water till they germinate. After they germinate and they grow a little bit, about 2 centimeters or so, only then do they require any nutrients. And at that time, the level of nutrients that you give is only about. Plants grow as they go through the various stages of development. You need to increase the concentrations of salts that you're putting into the water, because obviously the requirements are more and more different. So I will talk about that also a little later. And that, in fact, can be measured very easily with a conductivity meter. Temperature, most plants that we know of growing in the tropical region, they grow between 18 to 28. If the temperatures go much higher, you have to be careful that you don't lose your plants. You need to cool the rooting temperature. You need to keep the plants probably indoors in an air-conditioned environment, and so on. So roughly, as long as you can maintain between 18 to 28, in fact, I have grown my plants out in the open. They have faced temperatures of right up to 32, 35 degrees centigrade. Very few plants have actually died because of the temperature. So although they say it is 18 to 28, they definitely can stand at least the Bombay weather. Okay, so knowing all these, because these are the main things that you require to know before you start doing hydroponics. Now these, I do not expect anybody to remember, but I just wanted to show you the first three in the left column, that is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, are what are required for photosynthesis. So that is anyway taken care of by the leaves. The rest of the nutrients are coming from air and water. The middle two columns, which says macronutrients, are the ones which are required in larger amounts. And micronutrients are those that are required in trace amounts, absolutely minimal amounts, but they are still very, very essential. So when you look at commercially available nutrient solutions, you get them in 2 bottles, macronutrients in 1 bottle and micronutrients in another bottle. The last column here says non-essential nutrients. So these nutrients are not essential for the growth of the plant, but they are essential if you want it to be nutritious for us, for human consumption. Hence, if they are added to the plant, although the plant doesn't require it itself, the plant will absorb these nutrients, so they will be present in the plants, and when we consume the plants, we get these nutrients. So these are really only for human consumption that you require these. Okay, I was talking about how pH, or the measure of acidity, is very important. In this, I hope you can see the details of this. This is showing the availability of different elements at different acidities of the soil. On the extreme left is acid, a strong acid, extreme right is strong alkali. So you can see, for example, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, all these are majorly present or majorly available to the plant, let us say between medium acidic to medium alkaline. If you go towards strong alkaline or strong acid, there is hardly any availability. Whereas if you look at the lower 4 or 5 elements, iron, manganese, boron, copper and zinc, which are the essential micronutrients, they are much more available in more acidic environments as compared to alkaline. Now, if you want your plants to get both, you need to find a midway so that all these essential elements are available to the plants. And hence, one normally uses for hydroponic growth, one uses pH between 5.5 to 6.5. So that it is between this range, so that you get large amounts of macronutrients as well as micronutrients for the plants. Also, if you make the medium very acidic or very alkaline, some of these elements, they precipitate, they come out of solution, so they are no longer available for the plants. Hence, pH has to be monitored. And this is the last graph, so you don't worry, I'm not going to be telling you something so technical. This is to show you how dissolved oxygen that is present in the water in a dissolved form changes with the pH as well as the temperature. So as the temperature of growth increases, the level of dissolved oxygen keeps dropping. So which means if the temperature in which you're growing your plants is high, let's say for example in the summer, then you're going to have very little oxygen available for the plants, just about 6 to 7 ppm, parts per million in the water. And hence the requirement for aerating the water in the summer is much more than the requirement for aerating the water in the winter. So this shows available as the dependence of dissolved oxygen on temperature, and this shows the dependence of dissolved oxygen on acidity. So as you go more and more, this is alkaline, this side is acidic, you can see that the dissolved oxygen level keeps dropping. So hence, you have to maintain a certain, strictly within a certain range, the pH of the solution. So these are the main 2 factors, pH, temperature, and dissolved oxygen, which we need to monitor. Okay. So now let's start. Once we have this basic information, where do we start? Do we start with seeds? If we start with seeds, we have to germinate them, we have to harden them. These are the various steps that one has to take care of, and then transplant them into a hydroponic system. You can also start with cuttings, but then that does not need hardening. You can directly transplant them into a hydroponic system, or you can buy these plants, baby plants from the nursery, which are already hardened for you. So they have been germinated, they have been hardened. You just have to put them into your hydroponic system. Below it shows 4 diagrams, which I will talk about a little later. So this is the basic. You can choose what you want to do, what you want to start with. Now, if a plant has to grow without soil, it definitely needs some support, because it needs something to hold the plant so that its roots can go down into the water, into the nutrient medium, and its stem can hold on so that its leaves can be exposed to the sun. And that medium, the support medium, is called a grow medium. There are varieties of grow mediums available. The difference between each of these is dependent on how much of air that it can have, or what is the aeration level, what is the hydration level, and so on of each of these, which is different. Different plants, for some reason, require a particular type of grow medium. I have used coconut fiber, but I've shown in the picture here, which is generally a very simple, very cheap, and very useful grow medium. And I've grown a variety of plants in it, and they have grown beautifully in this grow medium. So I would advise use coconut fiber, which is available commercially. Well, there is also a choice of various techniques. Broadly speaking, hydroponics involves at least 6 different types of techniques. There are different types. Now, each of the techniques has been modified. People have done DIY on it. People have used it and structured it to suit their own requirements and so on. But the basic technique available is one of these 6. If you look at the pictures, this one is a nutrient film technique. It requires an air pump. It also requires a water pump. The middle one requires only an air pump. This looks very simple. This method requires wicks. It does not require even an air pump. Okay. All these require a timer. This one requires a water pump, and so on and so forth. I would advise you can use any of these methods, but the simplest would be the deep water culture method. I've used several of these, but this one is the simplest. If you want to start hydroponics and you have never tried it before, this one is the simplest. It is most efficient, as well as it is less labor intensive. Okay, so I will be talking about the deep water culture mainly. So now we are confused. We don't know where to start. There is a lot to choose from. So what do? Well, then you have to decide on what are your priorities. Maybe your priority is it should be a low investment so that you don't spend too much. In case it fails, you have not wasted too much money. It also, because it's going to be a hobby, you want it to have a flexible schedule. You don't want to be strictly tied up with, get up at 6 a.m. and by 6:30 the plants have to be watered and so on and so forth. So the schedule should also be flexible. You want to take it as a hobby, so it should be convenient and enjoyable. Also, you should be able to do variety of things without having the expectation that yes, it has to succeed. There is no commitment. You're just trying out, you're using it as a hobby. So that is why it is a learning process. So finally, you decide, okay, based on various materials that are available, various methods that are available, you finally decide, okay, I want to start growing from seeds. Well, if you want to start growing from seed, there are 7 steps. The first, you choose and buy whichever seed. Choose the plant that you want to grow and buy those seeds. When you choose, you have to, particularly when you're doing it for the first time, please choose something that is very quick to grow and easy to grow. Something that is not very fussy in terms of the temperature requirements, in terms of the pH requirements, and so on. I would advise spinach or lettuce. These are leafy vegetables. They're very easy to grow. Within a month after planting, you can start eating your spinach that you have planted. So for lettuce. So these 2 are what I would advise. The second, once you have chosen and bought your seeds, you have to choose which grow medium or support medium you want to use. The factors that are important are you have to look at the water retention. How much water will this growth medium contain so that the plants will be healthy and they won't dry up. How much of aeration, because I said dissolved oxygen is extremely important for the roots. So you need to keep the roots in such a way, in a medium which will allow aeration. Plus, it should be pH stable. That means it should not be very, pH should not be so critical for its growth that if it varies slightly, the plant is going to die. So again, looking at all these parameters, I would either suggest coco peat or coconut fiber, as I said, or Hydroton, which is another commercially available material, which is nothing but large enlarged clay particles. Okay. Okay, now you have bought your seeds, you have chosen your grow medium, then you decide on which system you want to grow, which hydroponic system out of the 6 I mentioned. Again, when you are starting the basics, please remember that you should use a system which is simple, which is cheap, which is less labor and time intensive. Because if you use something very complicated and it doesn't work, you get so put off that you don't want to try it again. So use something that is cheap. You've not invested too much money. You don't mind trying it again if it has failed. Okay. Again, I would suggest either the Kratky method or the deep water culture method. I will talk about the Kratky method at the end. The deep water culture is what I would suggest. Okay. Choose a light source. If you have enough sunlight in your balcony, please go ahead and use it. In case you don't, and you have to use it indoors, then you need to use an LED grow light, which has full spectrum, because you get LED lights of giving different spectrum depending upon the stage of the plant that you want to grow. I would suggest to use full spectrum LED, and so that you can grow the plants in that LED if you do not have sufficient sunlight. Again, when you're choosing the light, one has to look at what is the cost, the intensity, the spectrum of light, of wavelength covered, and so on. Okay, so what I've written in blue is what I would recommend. Then you have to buy your nutrients. You can also make them. The composition of the nutrients that are required for hydroponics are available on the net. You can get them. There are so many publications which give you different compositions of nutrients which are required for different stages of the plants, for different types of plants, and so on. But as a beginner, I would advise you please buy the standard commercial nutrient mix, because it saves you the trouble of buying 20 different salts, weighing each one of them and mixing them. This comes in a proper concentrate, so that all you need to do is to dilute it to the required concentration. Then you need, as I said, you need to measure the pH. So buy pH paper. And that is the simplest way to measure. Even a 5-year-old can measure the pH of the water, because there is just change in color that you notice. Buying a pH meter, although more sensitive, is not really advisable, because maintenance of the pH meter is not easy. You also need an EC meter, which is an electrical conductivity meter, as I said, something with which you can measure the concentration of the nutrients in your solution. Okay, the last step, keep everything ready. Keep all your equipment ready. And I will show you in the next slide which is the equipment that you require. So once you've bought your seed, you've decided on your grow medium, decided on what system you're going to use, all that you have to do is to get started. Okay. So this is my setup. You can see a nutrient container, which is just a big kundi or a vessel in which you grow plants. It has a tray on the top, which is holes in it, which can keep in it the grow cup that I have shown here. Can you see this grow cup here?
Yes.
So this is the cup in which I'm going to put my grow material and put the plant inside. Okay, so this cup goes into this tray up here, and the roots will go down through this cup because it has got perforations, and the plants will go on the top. This is where the nutrient is going to fit. These are the two nutrient bottles that one gets. One is for macronutrients and one is the micronutrients. You get it as a pair. This, I've just shown you the two nutrient media that I had told you, I had talked about. This is the coco peat, and that is coconut fiber, and this is your leca or the hydroton. Notice here there's a small measuring cup, and this measuring cup will allow you to measure precisely the amount of macronutrients and micronutrients that you will use to measure to make your nutrient solution. pH paper, this is an EC meter, electroconductivity meter, which is just like a small pen. This is an aeration pump, and this aeration pump is actually one that I had got from when I was having an aquarium, a fish aquarium in my house. So this is one of those. Okay, so it's a very simple fish aquarium, aeration pump. And this is a strainer which one will have to use for washing the grow medium. The grow medium is coco peat, needs to be washed. It needs to be washed because you need to see that it acquires the pH that you are going to use for the nutrient medium. Very often the coco peat that we get has a very high pH, so it needs to be washed. If you do not wash the coco peat, then you will not be able to get the plants growing. And once you wash it, it is like a coarse powder. So if you want to wash it, you need to strain it so that the washing liquid can be discarded. So that's all. It's very, very simple setup. All that you need is these few things. You may need to buy the meter and that's it. Okay. Once you've got everything ready, you just need to revise what is it you need to do. The seeds have to germinate, they have to harden, and then you transplant. And then just wait till the plants flower. That's it. So again, temperature, moisture, the growth medium, aeration. When you're doing seed germination, some seeds require prior soaking. So for example, methi needs to be soaked in water before you can put it into the grow medium. Cucumber seeds need to be soaked for at least 2 days before you can put it into the nutrient medium, into the grow medium. So hence, different seeds have different requirements. Light conditions are important, and I will tell you exactly what one has to do at what stage. You plant, when you put the seeds into your grow medium, some seeds, very few of them, require it to be in the dark. Otherwise, you can just put them in, not in sunlight, but in daylight. And they will start germinating. Till they have become about 2 to 3 inches tall, do not transfer them. Place them in sunlight so that they can harden. Hardening is a process by means of which you are getting these tiny baby saplings ready for environment outside the world. So which means that you want them to get ready for sunlight conditions, and since they are very delicate at this stage, you cannot put them directly into your nutrient medium. So they have to get first used to the sunlight, and that is called hardening. So wait, be patient till they are at least about 2 to 3 inches tall, and only then are the roots strong enough to take the nutrient water as their only source of nutrition. So at that stage, what you get are the true leaves. Normally, the first 2 leaves that you see after the seed germinates are just cotyledonous leaves. And do not get convinced that now your plant is growing. You have to wait till the true leaves appear. And then the plants are then ready to transplant into nutrient medium. After that, it is just vegetative growth, and you have to wait till the plants flower. If you're growing leafy vegetables like palak or salad, then of course there is no flowering. Palak, within 1 month after planting the seeds, you've got your ready crop for your lunch. Okay, and palak, you can have at least 6 to 7 harvests from the same seeds that you have grown. So you only cut out the plants which are big and healthy, cut them out, use them for your lunch, leave the rest of the plant there itself, and you will keep getting more and more crops out of it, at least 6 to 7 crops. So palak is the easiest and most rewarding first experiment seed. Okay, then you have the flowering. For flowering plants, or those that you want the fruits for, those, of course, you have to be careful that you have to wait for the flowering. Only seeing the flowers on the plant is not sufficient, because these flowers need to be pollinated. I had several experiences with this. Some plants, they get pollinated by the wind, for example, tomatoes and capsicum. But for example, cucumbers, you have to wait for the insects to pollinate them. Now I live on the 16th floor. There were no insects around, and hence you have to hand pollinate them. And if you do not hand pollinate them, then these cucumbers will not form. So this is what one needs to be careful about. Just seeing flowers, don't be happy. Okay, once that is done, then of course you have your fruits and you can have them. So what do you need to take care of? Root heads. Please constantly watch the roots of these growing plants. The roots are a test of their health. If the roots start turning brown, then you know that there is a problem. You need to increase the aeration. pH, EC, and temperature, as I already mentioned, you have to see that you're maintaining optimal conditions. If your pH is too high or too low, then there are solutions, there are liquids available where you just add a drop of that liquid and you can again readjust the pH to that particular range that you're interested in. Yes, another thing that you need to do, particularly for plants like tomatoes, you cannot just let them grow, because if you have too much of foliage, you will not get too many fruits. So you need to prune them, you need to trim them. And if you don't prune them at the right time, you will get very low yield. So please remember that is one thing that you need to do. Not for all plants, but definitely for plants like tomato, cucumber, yes. Okay, and what does pruning mean? You have to pinch off the growing side shoots so that the side shoots do not crowd the plant and hence use up all the nutrients unnecessarily. There are some plants like the vine plants, like cucumber, they need support. And since they are growing in a very small amount of coco peat, the plants will definitely want some support to grow. So you have to use trellis or some way in which, in fact, I keep it in my balcony, so I just use the grill as a support. Okay, another thing that you need to be watchful about are pests. Insect pests, just keep watching your plants, see that there are no holes in the leaves and see that there are no insects. The moment you find something like that, remove those leaves which have holes in it, or turn the leaf back on the back, you might see those insects. So try and remove as many, but if they are very badly infested, you may need to spray them with some natural or medicinal plant extracts. For example, I normally use garlic extract, or I use lavang extract, which means the cinnamon, not cinnamon, what is it called? Lavang. Clove, the clove extract. So that works very well for most of these plants. But normally you do not find too many insects because there is no soil. So since there is no soil, there is no place really for the insects to even survive. So it is very uncommon to find insect pests. And if you do find, for example, aphids, if you do find aphids, then you can just use extracts of plants. Do not use chemical pesticides. So you can make sprays also of soap water, ordinary dishwashing soap. Make a dilute solution of that and spray the plants with that. Particularly if there is any fungal infection, let me tell you, it works wonders. But don't use a very concentrated solution, use a dilute solution so that the plants do not die, but the fungus dies immediately. Check for algae. Now you need to keep your nutrient solution covered away from sunlight, because the moment sunlight enters the nutrient solution, you're going to start getting algae. Algae will use up all the dissolved oxygen that is there in that solution, and the plants are going to suffer. So you have to keep your nutrient solution protected from light, and that is why always use a container which is dark colored, which will not allow sunlight to enter, and the tray in which you're going to keep those cups should only allow space for cups and should not allow sunlight to enter. Again, of course, general hygiene and cleanliness. I use tap water. So if you want to be really fussy, then you can use RO water, but that is from your water filter, but it's not at all necessary. One thing is important, please do not use water from a bore well, because that to start with has a very high EC. EC, that is electrical conductivity, which means it already has a whole lot of minerals which could be toxic to the plants. So please measure the EC of your water, the tap water or any water that you're going to use for making your nutrients. Because if you use water from the bore well, your plants are definitely going to die. Water should not have an EC of more than 40 ppm to start with. The water that we get from our municipality definitely has some dissolved nutrients in it. It is not like RO water. And so it does give you an EC of about 40 or so, 40 to 50, but nothing more than that. And if you do find that your water is having an EC which is much more than that, then please use water from your RO, from your water filter. Okay, so that's all. This is what you should keep in mind before you start. These are things you need to watch for once you start. That's it. And then all that you have to do is to actually get started. Very simple. Here is your plants which have germinated. This is the way I put them for germination. So you can see that these are the small cups that I was talking about, which have got coco peat inside. And inside the coco peat, I have planted the seeds. Now this is all kept on a bed of coco peat. There should be a thick layer of coco peat which is moistened with water, not nutrient solution. The depth of the seed inside the cup, they say as a thumb rule, it is about 2 to 3 times the width of the seed. So depending on the size of the seed that you're using, plant the seed that much at that much depth under the upper layer of the coco peat. So if you plant it too deep inside, your seed is not going to grow. It's not going to give you a sapling. Okay. So here I've just put labels for the type of seed that I have grown. So for example, T is for tomato, B is for broccoli, and so on and so forth. So please label, because you will not know for a long time what is the plant that you're looking after. Variety if you're using a variety of seeds. Please keep these moist on a daily basis, moist, not wet. It should not be soaking with water. I mean, there should not be a layer of water, but the coco peat should be moist. Within a few days, this is what you will see. These are the primary leaves that you can see, the first two cotyledonous leaves, which look similar for all plants. It's only when the plants see, can you see this small tiny leaf here? That is a true leaf. That one, look at these. This is cucumber. Cucumber has given these leaves very early. It grows very fast. So they can see these tiny leaves here. These are the true leaves. So you have to wait for the true leaves. You have to wait for the plant to become at least 2 to 3 centimeters tall before you transplant it. Okay, now once they have grown, the roots would have grown out of those cups into the coco peat that is below. So when you pick it up, you have to pick it up very gradually. Pick it up so that you do not break those roots that are hanging out of those cups. Gradually pick it up. Maybe you can pick it up along with some of the coco peat that is below it, and then just shake it off so that you can get rid of the coco peat, and then pick up the cup and put it into your chamber, nutrient chamber. Before that you have to harden it. Either you can harden it by in a tray in which you have done the germination, or you harden it by exposing those cups that I have shown you to the sun. Here, this is another method. Instead of using cups, what I did was I took a thick layer of coco peat. I just made partitions in it and planted different seeds. Not one per cup, but several seeds in a row. So you have got peas, I've got broccoli, I've got palak, capsicum, and so on, and tomato. Okay, just one row of each. Allow them to grow. And after they have grown, you will find some plants, some seeds have grown, some have not grown, and so on. This one is still lagging behind, this one is not healthy, and so on. Then pick up only the healthy ones after they have hardened, after they have grown to about 2 to 3 centimeters, and only transplant those into the cups. At this stage, you have to be careful because these would have rooted already. When you transplant into the cup, see that the roots are not damaged, and you place them very gently into the cup so that the roots can grow out of the perforations. This you can see capsicum has not grown at all. In the meantime, palak has grown maximum. These are peas, and this is broccoli. So wait, I would say wait a little longer, do not be in a rush to transplant. They're all turning towards the left, as you can see, because sun is coming from the left. They all face the sunlight. Okay. Now, these are ready. This is the stage when you can transplant. So now they have been placed into this nutrient chamber covered with this tray, and here are your seedlings, saplings. If you're growing lettuce, then this should be the stage, at least 4 to 5 leaves. This is cucumber. These are the 2 cotyledonous leaves, which are not the true leaves. This is the true leaf, this one. Okay, so once they have reached that, only then you can transplant. Then, of course, you just have to wait. Here is my palak, very healthy and fresh. It just grows happily. You don't have to look after it at all, except that if the nutrient solution the level goes down, then you just need to replenish it. That's all. This is cucumber. You can see it growing. You can see these tendrils. They are holding on for support to the grill. That's a grill is of sufficient support, and they will grow all around it. Okay, so this is the best part. You just watch them grow. You don't have to do much except at the most give it a supplement of nutrient solution. So this is just to show you. This is capsicum. The plant is very healthy. Doesn't grow very tall. At the most about 1.5 feet. And this is tomato. This is still growing. It hasn't even flowered yet. But just to show you how this small 2-inch cup is holding a huge plant. Inside, this plant will grow up to at least 5 feet tall, and this small amount of material or grow medium that is there in the cup is sufficient to hold the plant. These are roots. So these roots are what are dipping into the water. So then comes flowering. This is the capsicum that I just showed you in bloom. You can see that the leaves are healthy. Please keep watching the leaves. And again, of course, the roots, because the roots tell you about the health of the plant. This is a pea plant, and you can see it flowering. These are the pea plants, the pea flowers. As you can see, they're all kept just in the balcony, out in the sun, close to the grill. This is the only width of the balcony that I have, and this is where I normally grow my plants. So here are, you just have to wait. After the flowers, they form fruits, and there are your tomatoes. This is at least grown 5 to 5.5 feet tall from this 2-inch cup of material. These are green chilies, and these are the capsicum plants. So just to show you the produce, the final produce. So you can use it for lunch. As I said, every week I was getting enough palak for my family. And these are the capsicums. Just I like this one the best, the red one. Okay. So now, of course, there will be challenges. It is not hunky-dory every day. So there are problems that one faces. So I would just like to highlight a few of them. Look at this plant. The chili plant, if the aeration is not proper on the roots, this is how it appears. It will look completely dehydrated, flowers drying up, the plant is almost ready to die. And that's because the roots have not had sufficient aeration. This plant can be revived even at this stage. If you now put active aeration for the roots, it will definitely revive. So please keep watch on the plants. Root health. So this is what normal, healthy roots look like. Coming out from these cups into the water, this is definitely infected. You can see these roots which are browning. And browning is because they have now got fungus infection, and that is because there is less aeration. So you have to keep a watch on the roots. And this is a gone case. You can see the roots here completely gone. So anything like this, of course, the plants can't revive, the plants will die. But this stage, you definitely can revive them, and they do revive. Effect of temperature. Yes, here is my broccoli, which I was so hopeful about. It grew so beautifully. Look at the vegetation. It is huge, healthy, big leaves. But I just never got any broccoli. And that was because the temperature, there was a heat wave, and the temperature went to more than 35, 37. And that was it. And this happens with most plants like of this family, like cauliflower also. If the temperatures are above 30, you do not get any fruits at all. The plants are healthy, but there is no inflorescence. So there was no broccoli. I waited for more than 5 months. Finally, I discarded the plants because there was no sign of broccoli at all. So again, effect of temperature. Look at this pea plant. Can you see the tips of the leaves? Literally charred. The flowers have dried. So this happens, particularly the pea plant is quite sensitive to temperature. So if you find that the temperature outside in your balcony is going up, please see that you either bring the plant inside, give it artificial light and keep it in an AC room. The reason also being that with a high temperature, as I showed you earlier, as the temperature goes up, the amount of dissolved oxygen goes down and the roots are starved of oxygen. And that is another reason why they start getting completely shriveled up. You can also see these pea pods. So it has started fruiting, but let me tell you, I never got good healthy peas because the entire crop of peas I lost due to the temperature outside. So these are problems that one learns from. And so next time I grow peas, I know exactly what to do. Lack of pollination. Yes, this is my cucumber. Plenty of flowers I had. And I was still waiting for them to get pollinated. I found a couple of flowers fallen down, and then I realized there is some problem. So I said, okay, maybe I need to self-pollinate, to pollinate them by hand. I did that, and yet there were no fruits. The reason is that in cucumber, the male and the female flowers are separate. So just brushing the pollen I was thinking the pollen would be pollinating on the stigma, but it did not because the stigma was in a completely different flower. So one needs to transfer the pollen with a brush from the male flower to the female flower, which I did not know. Again, I should have read about it, but this is something I learned out of experience. So these are various problems. Just looking at the flowers, don't assume that you're going to get the fruits. One has to read about it. One has to see exactly what is required for the flowers to form fruits. Well, so in conclusion, I would like to state, as long as you have a well-ventilated, predator-free space. Why do I say predator-free? Because many of my friends have tried doing hydroponics, but their plants have been eaten up either by birds or by rats or by squirrels. So very sad. You have to find a space which is predator-free. You need sufficient sunlight, you need time, you need patience. And of course, you need some initial interest. That's all. You don't need to have literally overwhelming interest in wanting to do that. Even if you have a slight interest, it is definitely worth trying. And the more you do it, the more it grows on you. It also requires very simple equipment. I showed you what is required, very cheap materials, and you just put in a little bit of effort. And then these are the things you watch out for. That's it. And let me tell you, the results are very satisfying, very rewarding. You can enjoy self-grown tomatoes for soup, home-grown palak for parathas, and capsicum for your pizzas. A very, very rewarding experience. Definitely worth trying as a hobby at least. Okay, once you've got it going, now what? We need to grow. We can't stop. So what do we do? Once you know your basics, once you know what is the fundamentals that you require for growing plants, always remember to start small. Do not start on a large scale unless you know what are the nitty-gritties of the entire system. Once you know that, then of course you would want to automate. You want to use advanced technology so that you reduce your effort, you reduce your time, and you increase productivity. There are several automated systems available commercially, even for growing at home. So definitely use them. But of course, as I said, initial costs are high. So I would definitely not advise you to go in for this right away. If you're starting, start with the simplest system which I just described. Once you get your hands on it, then definitely go in for this. Next, you can design and make your own hydroponic system to suit the space that you have, the availability of sunlight, and the plants that you want to grow. That itself is a very interesting enterprise that one can take and grow in the system. Third, you can experiment on making hydroponic produce organic. This is something I had mentioned right in the beginning. Hydroponic plants are not considered organic. Why? Because the definition of organic is they are growing on food or material which is obtained from either animals or plants. So it has to be nutrients derived from animal or plant origin. What we are doing in hydroponics is giving chemicals. That means the end product after the nutrients of animal and plant origin have been digested by microbes. So since we are not using nutrients which are directly of animal or plant origin, normally what happens is these nutrients are digested by microbes. Microbes produce the same chemicals that you are using in hydroponics. And eventually plants are only going to absorb those nutrients regardless of which animal or plant origin the manure that you have used. But since we are bypassing this whole step, we are giving digested material by digested produce from animals or plants, which has been digested by microbes. The final product is what we are giving, and hence that is not in a chemical form, hence that is not considered organic. But yes, definitely there are people who are growing organic hydroponics. So what you have to do is take an extract of the compost maybe that you make from kitchen waste or worm casting from vermicompost pits, water from fish tanks, because fish, and this in fact is aquaponics, because fish produce a lot of ammonia. So that ammonia then is converted by the microbes in the water, in the fish tank water, to nitrates, and this gives nitrates to the plants. So the used water from the fish tanks is circulated and given to the plants. Plants utilize that and they grow. So actually you are using organic source of nutrients. So you can use that, or you can use commercial manure available. All that you have to do is to use a plant extract, a water extract of that. That means just keep it in water for 2 or 3 days and use that extracted water. It is also called compost tea. And use that compost tea instead of your chemical nutrients, and you have organic produce. The only problem with that is there will be batch to batch variation, because you do not know from where the material, what is this, let's say the batch of your kitchen waste, it may vary from batch to batch. So the tea that you make, the extract that you get from this compost will be different each time that you extract it, based on whatever your kitchen waste was. And hence, you cannot standardize the conditions as well. The second thing is, it's not sufficient to call them organic, particularly if you're using, for example, commercial manure, or even if you're using kitchen waste as a starting material. The reason being that these plants which have gone to form your kitchen waste could have been sprayed with pesticides, insecticides, and so on. So those are obviously going to come into your extract. And hence, if you want to really call it organic, you have to use compost made from waste, organic waste, which has not been exposed to any herbicides or pesticides or insecticides. Similarly, if you say that you're using cow dung or any other manure, fine. That is all organic, it is coming from an animal source, that is absolutely fine, provided you're sure that the animals have not eaten plants or grass which has been sprayed with pesticides or insecticides, because obviously it is going to come out in their excreta. That is what's going to come out into your extract, and that is what you're feeding your plants, your hydroponic plants. So you really would not trust calling it organic unless you're actually sure that you're using the origin of this waste that you're using is actually coming from a source which has not been used, on which you have not used herbicides or pesticides. Okay, but I think this is definitely worth trying, and you'll be happier, I think, if you feel that you're eating organic produce rather than chemically produced vegetables. Okay, so this is what you can do once you have stabilized your system in your hands. That's it. I think I've spoken enough. I would like to address questions, and if there's anything that you would like me to explain again, I would be happy to.